So today's the sort of closest one we've got to a solstice, because the solstice kind of fell just after our last one. We didn't really think about it, but works out well because it's a birthday one as well, and it's very wintry from the sounds of things. Very wet, which is very appropriate to this story. So we've got several of Mum's requests, which are kind of all link into water and rain and things, which are circles and rings, particularly sort of in nature and how they reappear in lots of different places.
Trumpet.
Trying to be inconspicuous or camouflaged.
While spilling your nuggets.
She's off.
Oh dear.
Sorry.
What the water did, so shapes and patterns and shadows that are caused by rain. Sunday roast is one from a while ago, but I thought it would be appropriate to put it in for the solstice. And confusion about who someone is talking to when they're talking to themselves or an animal, or and these odd conversations happen. And buried treasure was one that Mum wanted from a while ago. I've added chain reactions, which I'd sort of written down a while back as well, where a small thing kind of gets bigger and bigger. Maybe somebody said something and then they kind of have to continue to say that. Or a small thing happens and it has big ripple effects. And it was there all along.
Oh, aha!
So the story is called Ripples, and I started it with a little poem of the same name. Around and around, like the years, like our breath, like the cycles in all things, renewed eternally, ever expanding outwards, the slightest touch beginning circles new, to carry on, around and around, like life and water, roots and layers, rings and beginnings, and ends and hope and all things.
Right.
So on a much less serious note, the story ripples. Why do you always look like that? Asked Albie, polishing the windscreen with a tissue. Oh, thanks, Albie, Alice replied from the passenger seat, hauling grocery bags out of the downpour into the damp footwell. Albie leaned back from the windscreen and turned his head on one side. Sorry, talking to myself. Is that a philosopher thing? Alice stuck her tongue out at him. Pretty sure all those old historical philosopher blokes did a lot of it. She flopped back against the seat. Are you sure I have to come to Solstice? You know Jen will adult at me and ask how the house is. Albie did a hurt face. The house is good. We have bags of potting mix in the kitchen, an outdoor table that's still a pile of bricks, and we don't own any teaspoons. Good points. Let's say we're renovating the kitchen to bring the garden inside. Albie, pretty sure making up huge fibs is not good on the moral philosophy front. Albie looked carefully benign and started the car, and Alice hurriedly did up her seatbelt. The torrent kept falling all the way out of town, swirling waves breaking under the windscreen wipers. I don't see how a bonfire's going to happen in this, Alice commented, following the passage of one winding rivulet down the passenger side window with sulky eyes. Oh, we'll work something out. Albie sat up straight in the driver's seat like an enthusiastic know-it-all schoolchild and beamed infuriatingly out at the grey river-like road ahead of them. They had to stop twice on the freeway because Albie couldn't see through the waterfall coming out of the sky, and Alice, against her better judgment, fell asleep. When she woke up, they were bumping up Jen's dirt road, somehow dry, and with the car still in working order, and Albie was no less cheerful. Jen's driveway was a swamp, so Albie pulled the car up onto the patch of paving by Jen's back door, and they dashed in under the narrow veranda. Jen didn't come to the door when Albie knocked, so they let themselves in. Jen's voice could be heard talking in the kitchen. Albie frowned. "I didn't see Elena's car out there," he commented. "Oh, did you get wet? Stay there and warm up then, I don't mind," said Jen's voice. Albie looked at Alice, who shrugged and called out loudly, "Yeah, we got really wet." Jen appeared around the edge of the door, looking a bit sheepish. "Oh, hooray, you're here!" She bounced out and awkwardly hugged them both at once so that their heads nearly banged together. "Who was that you were talking to?" asked Albie brightly. Jen disentangled herself from the hug, failed to avoid the straps of the many grocery bags they were holding, and tipped some parsnips onto the floor, seeming a bit flustered. "Sorry, it was my girlfriend on the phone, actually." "Jen? What girlfriend?" Jen picked up some parsnips and walked away back towards the kitchen. "Cassie," she said. Albie followed her, too close like an irritating fly or a small child expecting a treat. "I didn't know a girlfriend was a possibility. This is exciting. She better be coming to Solstice. I made Alice come." Alice put her hand over her eyes and groaned, but Jen didn't seem to have noticed the suggestion that Alice was present reluctantly. She was busy shaking her head, looking harangued. "Oh, no, she can't, sadly. She's a football player and she has a big game today." Albie looked very concerned. "Oh no, in this rain? That would be terrible. Why didn't they cancel it?" He then saved Jen the trouble of answering, for which Alice thought Jen looked oddly grateful, by adding, "But it's okay, because she can come to Sunday roast tomorrow." Jen looked positively alarmed. "What Sunday roast, Albie?" Alice shook her head and gently moved Albie out of Jen's personal space by his shoulders. "Albie, come on, let it go for 5 minutes." She gave Jen an apologetic look, of the sort that also meant, "You know how he is." Albie's got his heart set on adding the tradition of Sunday roasts next day to the solstice. "He made us bring all this extra food," she explained, turning her head slightly to roll her eyes at Jen without Albie seeing. "What if it isn't a Sunday?" asked Jen, looking a bit more herself and smirking at Albie. Albie seemed very much bothered by this possibility, and Jen obviously felt a bit mean. "Never mind. It kind of makes sense. We usually have to wait for the weekend anyhow, now that everyone has normal day jobs. Anyway," she beamed and switched the kettle on. "How's the house?" "We're renovating the kitchen to bring the garden inside more," said Alice, a bit too quickly. "It's a mess, but it'll be good later, you know." Jen turned to get down the teacups, and Albie gave Alice an extremely amused look that made her turn pink. The sound of a car door slamming outside drew everyone's attention, and they herded out to greet Elena. "Sorry I'm so late," Elena puffed, hefting a heavy backpack inside. "I almost forgot the cake ingredients and had to double back." Water dripped off the umbrella she clutched in one hand, rapidly forming a puddle on the wooden floor of the small back sitting room. Albie watched the way it grew, one drip at a time, in ever-expanding rings. One of Jen's cats scampered out of the room. Jen looked a bit upset, but not at the water, for which she swiftly produced an old towel. Guys, I have to own up to something. Cassie hates bonfires, Albie offered.
No.
Who's Cassie? Asked Elena. No, it's not that. It's the coins for the cake. I was so pleased, Albie. I found more, like you wanted, so we'd all have an equal chance at good luck. She looked at her shoes. But I've lost them. What? Chorused Albie and Elena. I'm really sorry. I took them out on a walk. I just wanted to make them extra special by taking them down to the creek on the full moon. And then on the way back, I had to stop to answer my phone and take everything out of my bag. And I guess I must have left the tin by accident when I repacked. I've retraced my steps, but I can't find it anywhere. Jen looked so sad about it that it was impossible to be annoyed. Well, we can take Scooter out on a search, Elena suggested. He's waiting very patiently in the car. I didn't want him to run around in the mud. Dog! Shouted Jen and raced out the back door towards Elena's car. Everybody chuckled fondly and then laughed as Jen opened the car, reached swiftly in, and carried a squirming, licking Scooter across the muddy stretch of driveway to the door, pressing her face to his. Well, that cheered you up, Elena commented, as Jen put Scooter down in the living room, and he raced off after another one of the cats. When the rain stops, we can go on a walk and see if any of you spot anything, Jen announced. The others looked sceptically at the rain and the vast expanse of countryside outside, but they kept quiet. Let's have some tea and write wishes in the meantime, suggested Elena. Just because we don't have our coins doesn't mean we shouldn't go on with the other traditions. Albie nodded very seriously. Yes, and Jen can tell us about her new girlfriend Cassie, who's coming to Sunday roast. Jen looked alarmed. No, Albie, what Sunday roast? Asked Elena. They filled Elena in on Albie's new enthusiasm for roast as they sat around Jen's coffee table, folding fine paper into lotus lanterns. That seems like a nice thought, Albie, Elena mused. But you can't just invent a whole extra day to the Solstice tradition without asking. I'm on call for work tomorrow, so I might not be able to stay. Albie looked mournful. Then Jen looked out the window. Look, it's stopped raining. The world outside looked freshly washed and reshaped. The clay soil covered in the tracks of miniature river systems. The trees streaked with silver and black-brown like the coats of zebras. Birds and ants were emerging in brief flurries of movement from the scrub, and Scooter charged back and forth through the puddles that transformed the fields into small wetlands, chasing the birds and sending up showers that sent the human members of the group scrambling away from him. Jen had put on Wellington boots and was gleefully sliding in the mud. Alice watched this less adulty Jen with a bemused smile and a sense of guilt. When they got down to the creek, Jen led the way to where the rain had formed a miniature waterfall over a rocky outcrop. The water ran down in a thin stream that fell at the centre of expanding ripples, stretching out until they were indistinguishable from the current. So, Alice, are you going to expand the kitchen into the courtyard? Asked Jen. Alice groaned inwardly. Maybe. We've got to tidy it up a lot first and see how it might work. Alice watched those expanding ripples in the water. That was what would happen to the lie if she kept embellishing it. One big statement by someone passing the news on, and the whole waterhole could flood. She'd be drowning in the billabong and taking Albie along for the swim. He might have said it in the car, but Albie was far too genuine and easy to read to actually lie to his old sharehouse family. All he wanted was for everyone to have Sunday roast. Alice sighed. To be honest, it's just a big mess at the moment, she admitted. The whole bringing the garden inside thing's probably a bit of a pipe dream. Knowing me, we'll just get so many indoor plants we can't move to do the dishes and then use them as an excuse to get out of doing the dishes. Jen and Elena laughed. Albie smiled at Alice in a very satisfying way. Then he stopped looking at her and focused on something further away. "Jen," he pointed, "Scooter's digging." It was true. Scooter was determinedly excavating a very specific bit of earth on a small grassy mound near the water, as if certain there was something to be found in that particular spot. Albie looked at the others, and they approached curiously. "The coin tin kind of got buried," Jen said. "It was only a week ago that I brought it out here." Nonetheless, she pressed forward to see what it was that Scooter had found. The dog dug deeper and deeper, creating a narrow trench. "Maybe he's just digging for fun," Elena commented practically, peering down the hole. Scooter seemed oblivious to them watching him, intent on his task. "It might be some kind of metal thing in there," Albie murmured, peering in closer. "What kind of tin are the coins in, Jen?" Jen looked unconvinced. "A small Milo one." "As you do," smirked Alice. Jen looked suitably embarrassed. "Well, it isn't a Milo tin," Albie announced, sticking his arm in the hole. "But it is something." "Ow, Scooter!" The dog had attempted to carry on his excavations despite the presence of Albie's hand. Albie wiggled his arm around a bit. "It's kind of stuck." He sat back and let Scooter dig some more, then reached in and tugged something upward. The soil fell away in soft, damp clods to reveal a four-pronged metal object. "It's a lost fork for a giant," joked Elena. "It's a candelabra," whispered Albie, clearly thrilled. "Jen, do you have candles?" Jen snorted. "Of course. What did you think the plan was if it was too wet for a bonfire?" Albie shook it. Alice shook her head, amazed. "Well, we'll have to have both now. We've found buried treasure." There was some general surprised laughter, and an odd, comfortable silence descended. They all stood for a moment and looked back at the water. Above the tiny waterfall, a seemingly still pool extended back over the rock, the surface twitching slightly every so often from underlying currents. Alice slipped her arm through Albie's and watched as the scurry of some small birds along the branches above sent droplets crashing like meteors to spread those same ringed ripples over the surface. She looked up through the trees at the sun, also ringed with halos of white, orange, and pink. Suddenly, she realized that Jen had moved off somewhere along the bank and could just be heard speaking very quietly out of sight. Silently, Alice nudged Albie and Elena. "What?" said Albie. But Elena glared at him and he closed his mouth purposefully. "Come on, you're safe with me," said Jen's muted voice. Alice crept carefully towards the sound and peered over to where Jen was pressed up against a tree, attempting some kind of camouflage. Poorly, since she had a bright yellow raincoat on. On the ground near Jen's feet was a pile of snails, which she'd evidently been collecting. And a short distance away, sitting on the bank, was a blue-tongued lizard, looking rather sleepy and slow, and evidently enjoying the newly emerged sun. Alice stayed where she was and crouched down to observe quietly, and Albie and Elena silently followed suit. Slowly, tentatively, and with effort, the lizard approached Jen's snail pile and began to gulp at the mollusks, at first cautiously, glancing at the poorly hidden Jen, and then more enthusiastically. "That's it," whispered Jen. "Enjoy the buffet. I have loads of those up at the house and I hate them." Elena stifled a snort of delighted laughter, and their cover was blown. Jen jumped guiltily and looked up at the three of them crouching, smiling on the grass. Nice friend, Jen, Albie grinned. Now I know how come you can actually grow lettuce in summer. The lizard was now entirely ignoring them, gulping down snails with abandon. Jen, Alice started, but Jen was tiptoeing away from her lizard friend and off up the field back towards the house. They all trooped up the hill, Albie swinging the candelabra about and jumping in puddles. A light drizzle began to fall, and Elena looked up at the sky in concern. Looks like the bonfire might be off after all. As they approached the house, Alice pointed. Wow, Jen, it must have been a ton of rain here. Look at your window box thing still overflowing. Jen looked. On the windowsill was a long, deep planter box, waiting to be filled with herbs in the spring. Water was brimming up over the edge at one end and trickling down the wall below, making a long, straight stripe on the white stone. Looks like it isn't draining right at that end, remarked Elena. Jen's face slowly lit up with comprehension. She ran the rest of the way and plunged her hand into the overflowing water, drawing out a small Milo tin. It was here all along, she laughed. The rain just distracted me. I must have put it down here and forgotten to take it to the creek in the first place. Alice grinned. Jen, did you really answer your phone on the way back from the creek, or was it maybe an animal friend that you stopped for? Jen sagged a bit, handing the wet Milo tin to Elena. Well, okay. It was the cat from the farm next door. I took some bacon rind out to see if I could befriend her. Alice grinned some more. Jen was seeming less adulty by the minute. I'm guessing you don't feel like showing us any pictures of Cassie? Jen looked at her Wellingtons. Cassie doesn't really like photos. I might have told a bit of a fib about her being my girlfriend. The others laughed. It's all right, said Alice. I made up the renovation thing, so we're even. Albie shook his head seriously at them both. Can we be done with fibs now and light the fire? The drizzle had stopped, and they soon had a crackling blaze to sit by as dusk approached. Albie, who had changed determinedly into a very faded and baggy giraffe onesie, insisted on having the candles alight as well, so that flames of all sizes danced on the early evening breeze. A large log in the centre of the fire pulled away from its bark exterior with a pop and seemed to let the fire in through a spider's web of cracks. Albie drew around the rings in the wood in the air with his finger. Those are years, he mumbled. Said Alice. He was trying to decide if her wish was far-fetched. Does it ever worry you that the years just go round and around? Albie murmured, waving a spiral in the evening air. Nah. Jen twisted her hot chocolate cup. It just means we constantly get fresh starts. Albie nodded thoughtfully, then seemed to shake himself back into the moment. Can we have Sunday roast now? It's not Sunday, Elena objected. Albie shrugged. Whoever said Sunday roast had to be on a Sunday? The others laughed, and roast was duly put on, along with the cake, in which there was a good luck coin for everybody, because, as Albie put it, everyone should go into new beginnings with hope of good fortune.
Oh, beautiful. That's a great story. Oh, it is.
Very good.
And cats made an appearance in 2 out of 3.
Yes.
times.
Yes.
Alice didn't even deign to go by the laps, but
No.
just went straight to the chair by the fire.
Very if you can see it.
Oh yeah, I see him. I see him.
That's lucky. That's Sophia.
And missing the,
Missy's there. Yeah, the cats are in. No one's got a dog, but there are plenty of cats. And
What kind of dog did you imagine it was?
What dog was Scooter? I think Scooter's a bit of a long-haired, medium-sized bitzer. Sort of, you know, shaggy, maybe mixed with like a schnauzer, mixed with something a bit bigger or something like that.
I was Harry McClary-ish, but
yes.
Yeah.
Harry McClary-ish, actually that's quite a good description. I think maybe like Harry McClary, but kind of greyish in colour or something. Yeah.
That sounds. Yeah.
That's good.
I like it.
I was going to ask about what people imagine, because there are lots of things where I didn't really fill the details in this story, and I'm really curious what sort of came into your head. I wondered is what or who did people imagine Cassie was in the end?
I know of several people. I imagine that Cassie was a girl who maybe Jen was trying to woo, but it hadn't quite got there yet. But I imagined her as being played by a patchwork of the different girls who play football that I know in real life. Because I know several queer as well, so I know several like strong football girls. So I just imagined like all of them together in this one mysterious person.
I just thought of Aaron Phillips. That's all I could think of. Aaron Phillips, footballer.
Footballer. That's interesting. So, did most people think that Cassie was a girl? Like, didn't think she was entirely made up?
No, but that was partly because I wanted her to be a real person. I was really sad.
You felt sorry for Jen.
Yeah.
Having a made-up girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah. At one point I was going,
You thought she was a lizard? Yeah. That was one possibility that kind of crossed my mind when I was writing the bit about the lizard, because I wanted there to be an animal that she'd visited by the creek that was the cause of the things being left behind and the distraction. But my idea of Cassie is that she was talking to something in the kitchen and she wasn't actually on the phone. She was embarrassed because she was talking to like a sparrow on the windowsill or something. So she kind of said that it was a person, but really she just talks to animals a lot.
I liked the complete dismantling of the adult kind of persona, you know, it's just the complete crumbling that sort of happens on a daily basis.
Now I'm just playfully enjoying all of
Yes.
Exactly.
Good on Albie.
Yes.
I tell you what, I liked the little description that was down by the creek though. That was just sort of what we were talking about the day. I showed you that colours of the things and things. That's just what it was like. You know, just the movement of a bird off a tree after rain, you know, and this mirror just gets shattered, or just a little breeze and the mirror just starts just fabulous. Really, really nice.
That's right, because you posted those pictures.
I posted the pictures of rings because I got really fascinated with that expansion thing. I love the thing about the made up stories and how they become bigger and bigger. But what was fascinating too was like, so you have a drop fall here and a drop fall here, and the rings would expand, and then you get that kind of Venn diagram.
They all overlap with each other.
Yeah.
Oh, now that's made me think of like, I want to see a fountain where the fountain is just like a really flat plane of water and then very specific drips that drip at the same time, so you get these like complicated geometry.
That'd be very nice.
Like things, you know, Celtic knot type things. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
That would be
a
very
beautiful project.
Yeah.
That's like that's at the intersection of science and art, to work out like the physics of it to make it do what you want it to do.
True. Very
Right. You've seen this one, so I'll show Mark and Margaret. They might be able to see it.
What's this?
What do
Can
got?
you see that?
Oh yeah, this is really strange.
What is it?
Can't really see it out there. Might have to hold it a bit higher.
Yeah.
Tilt it up so that the
It's wood.
Yeah, see, can you see what's in the wood?
It's a nail.
A nail.
Yeah.
How?
But this is a section of a giant round that I split up at Grattan Street. The nail is inside the tree.
So it must have been put in when the tree is small.
So this was about this wide.
Oh, wow.
And it's right in the centre of the tree. It's stained the bark and everything.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So that was nailed in when it was a sapling.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
So my romantic notion about it is in 1950, my parents were married in 1950, Mum was released from hospital. But in the few years previous to that, she bought the block, Grattan Street, for £40.
Wow.
And my idea is that nail is from, the for sale sign that was nailed to some little spinning.
That's great. I like it. We'll go with that.
I reckon go there.
Everyone agrees. That's what happens. Right. That's really cool. But when you're talking about,
So I'm not burning that.
you're posting those pictures, were you talking about the rings as in the ripples, or were you talking about tree rings?
I was talking about both.
Right.
Because I also put some tree rings up.
Yeah, I thought so. That's right.
Some of them, I was showing Sarah one day in a chat, they look like the irises of people's eyes,
Yes.
and you get this kind of blurry bit in the middle, and then it becomes more defined.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
And
love
then
that bit about the eye comparison with an iris and an eye. That was quite a nice thing.
Yeah,
That might have to
sort of
re-emerge in another story, I think.
Yeah.
That's right. It's kind of, like you're seeing into the history of the tree, which I think is amazing. And down the track towards Wollonga, you have all these bits that would have once been beautiful rings, and of course they've hollowed out and they're now people's toes, like animals' toes and all that sort of thing. And some of them must literally be hundreds of years old, because some of those gum trees, their circumference would be the length of this tail, which is a couple of metres. They're amazing.
In biology, we learned about the mechanics of how those rings form. Is that something? Do you know about?
No, I do not. We were talking about this.
Really interesting. So, the way that the rings happen is the dark rings represent winter, and then the light rings are summer.
Oh.
So in winter, the tree grows more slowly, and it grows smaller cells. So they're literally packed really close together. That's why they look dark. And then the lighter ones are bigger cells and more of them. Even the summer growth.
Wow.
That's why they have that colour.
Red tea available if anybody would like some.
Okay, without the red tea. I also noticed that actually you have a branch and it's topped, and the branch next to it's topped. This one, the rings are entirely concentric and consistent. This other one, the rings are like way off to one side and
I guess it must be, it must be when they're like trying to grow in a certain direction away from something, or there's gravity element.
Oh, that's right. That's another thing for the Storytime is inexplicable changes of direction.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because there was that branch,
Yeah, one of the things I noticed was down the track in it, there's a branch, it's growing up, beautiful little thin branch, really healthy, and then suddenly it goes like this, like almost at a writing. So something's obviously been removed that was a barrier or something, and then it's just gone from the line.
16%.
Yes, sometimes they do that. One is doing like it goes out from the tree and it's done a complete U-bend like that. And it's like, so there must have been a branch coming through here once or something. Yeah, I love that.
That's very cool.
The ones that are the hardest to break up are the ones where the trunk has gone into two shapes. So there are two parts of the trunk. And this is a bit that cut in cross section, and there'll be another bough coming off the side. So when you actually go to split that up, it's got two concentric rings and another ring coming out like this way. So it's really hard to break them up. You've got to get it right down the middle of the two, or it won't go.
In Tassie, they have this big human pine, and
Yeah.
they have all the rings, and then they take the like historical dates and attach them to the rings, and that's
gorgeous.
significant you are in the life of the tree.
Yeah.
So what sort of ages are you talking?
They were going
Don't
back to
say 65.
I think it was hundreds of years old. And then there's the one in Tassie that's the oldest living, and it's in the Derwent River, it's the oldest living tree, and they don't actually don't tell you which one it is.
They protect it,
yeah. But you know, one of them will be some of the oldest, and one of them is
and one of
the
them
oldest.
the oldest. Wow. Amazing. Wow. Yeah, I love that you can see also things like if you're looking at a tree, the inside of a tree, and one of the really dark, it's usually because there was a bushfire that year, and you can see the charring
damage on the outside.
just burn through. Yeah,
it's good.
Wood's fascinating in its kind of the way it contains that history. I think it was in the film we saw called Highly Strung, which is the history of the Australian String Quartet, which incidentally we saw last night. I must tell you about it. And the violins they have, which are from the 18th century, and they're all, they're matching violins, 2 violins, viola and a cello, and they're all made by the same group of people. And they were talking about the difference between the quality of the wood of that era and the quality of wood now, because over the last 100 years in particular, even the wood of trees is affected by pollution, so they're kind of getting the same tones in these beautiful instruments that rely on quality of wood.
Wow.
So are there any other requests for next time when we can finish up the recorded part with this call?
I want to request people changing really fast
Okay, yeah.
and the complications therein.
Oh, that's really interesting, Ed, because one morning I got up, I said today something like things to do, places to go, and then instead, people to be. I just really like that as a line.
Yeah, I really feel that.
You have political ones? I think you should
How political?
Privatisation of public transport. You live in a country where you can't get on the same bus with a ticket.
Yeah, well, it's pretty annoying. I could
privatise.
probably take it to an extreme and do something very comical about a holiday where people just, they've got this ticket and they can only get this one bus with it, and all the other ones are useless.
Well, that happened in Blackpool. When we were in Blackpool, we got on a bus. No, you can't come on this bus.
Oh yeah, that's right. It did happen to us in
Get off.
Yeah, and you end up needing like 6 different tickets. Yeah, that could be very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 of the red buses you can go on with that ticket,
Right.
not the green one.
Okay.
Do the buses know? Do they care?
Yeah. Well,
Any others?
you can put them in the chat.
Yeah, you can always just put them in chats, just any immediate ones.
So I can see a certain activity happening. Shirley Fletcher.
Cat.
Can we have failed knitting projects?
Some other people in the room might have something to say about this. Okay.
This is my interrupt you. Doing everything. Cats are like that.
Cats do that. They're a nuisance.
Yep.
All right. Yes, we can have failed knitting projects.
The ones that never thinking of them.
There's nothing. No, there's no failed knitting projects.
There's
I was referring to Margaret. I was referring to a memory of from grade 3, which some of you might have heard about before, which is that we all had to knit a doll. In fact, I wouldn't say what Dolly was, but I don't like to say that. But we had to knit a doll. And I'm sure everyone else got help from their mummies. Yeah. But I didn't get help from my mummy. And when I took my dolly up to the teacher, she said, "Oh," she was Scottish, yours looks like it's been in an automobile accident."
It's
Yeah, that was
really
fun.
exciting.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And I like the reappearance of the characters.
Yes.
They're sort of,
Yeah.
you know, Claire, he from, you know, oh, good, he comes
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And I thought would be nice to see Jen, because I think Jen's shouting about cats was
Yeah.
popular.
Another side of her as well.
Yeah.
that was-
Yeah, well, they've all grown up a bit, so.
Yeah, exactly. Could I request a copy of the poem that you read out
Yes.
in text in the group chat? Because I would really like to
Certainly.
read that. Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Yes, I can send you that. That's good.
Great.
And if you want to do a bit of fun, imaginative thing also in the chat, I thought it might be fun to guess what, and I haven't thought of the answer to this, but what was Alice's wish that she was thinking might have been a bit absurd or like over the top?
Slightly absurd wish that Alice had. All right, cool.
All right.
And also next story time we should all bring a kitchen a garden inside our kitchen.
Bring on.
Gardening chips.
So we've all got a plant.
I was going to bring an indoor plant. Just a quick thing that I forgot to squeeze in. Next story time will not be on August the 10th, as I am leaving to come to Adelaide. That's
We just left that out.
So next story time will be when I am here, and I'm thinking maybe around the bonfire at my birthday thing I'll do the story time.
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. So don't expect a story time on the 10th or a recording thereof to appear on the 11th or 12th. It will be a bit later.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Very understandable.